The link to the story will be in the description. Drink up, goddess by who asked you.
Okay, so what's the play, furball? Give me a second, Naruto. Naruto and Kurama had just been about to celebrate the success of their trickery when the arrival of another party interrupted them. When Kurama had been attacked just a while ago, he had been surprised and curious at just who or what these people were. So, in a split second, he thought up a plan that might help him and Naruto figure out more about these people before they could do the same to them. The arrival of that guy ruined his plan. Kurama sighed. It seems like they'd be forced to show a bit more than they'd like. It wasn't hopeless though, as he thought of another plan that might just work if they pull it off. Listen up, kid, he started. You're going to have to fight that fucker. Fight him? Make it look like you're doing it in self-defense. But do beat the shit out of him. He nodded, beginnings of a smirk appearing on his face. With Sage Mode. Naruto's eyes widened. Sage Mode? Are you crazy? You saw what happened to me when I tried that. Stop whining, idiot. I wouldn't be suggesting it if I didn't have a plan. Do you trust me? The blonde paused. He was still unsure about going into Sage Mode again after what he had felt in the first attempt, but he knew Kurama. He wouldn't just think of a plan if it meant placing him in danger. It was touching really. Their friendship had overcome leaps and bounds since the war, and he didn't trust anyone more than the old fox himself. He sighed and nodded reluctantly before saying, I do. Go ahead, buddy. Good. As I was saying, Kurama cleared his throat and continued. Use Sage Mode to beat him. Okay, and how do you expect me to keep my cool? I'll be acting as a filter for natural energy. Let me gather it. You just go fight. Then, you start acting like you've only just discovered this power. We'll just say it's a side effect of being possessed by the spirit they seem to think of me as. Shit, more acting. Naruto hated acting. He wasn't good at it at all. So imagine his surprise when the two archers bought it so easily. The only reference he had who was an actual actor was that princess of the land of snow, Koyuki Kazuhana, whom they had accompanied in reclaiming her rightful place as the daimyo of the land. You did great with Sasuke Uchiha. Maybe you should try Kakashi this time? Kurama joked, amusement clear in his eyes. So, act like I don't give a shit at all. Got it. What next? We know that they're already interested in us. By the looks of it, they've been searching for us for quite a while now. What makes you say that? These guys arrived in clothing fit for a fight. They had their weapons ready. He noticed Naruto's face scrunch up in confusion before elaborating further. They didn't stumble upon us by accident. They were well prepared for a fight. They were tracking us. Ooh, that makes sense. Naruto nodded in understanding. Who do you think these people are? Civilians can't do even a quarter of the things they did in that fight. I'm not sure. They're definitely not shinobi though. I can't feel any chakra from them at all. The woman said something about a god's true form. You think they're gods? Naruto briefly recalled getting caught in an explosion of power that came from the woman. The way she glowed under the darkness of the night, silver eyes and all, had firmly cemented its place in Naruto's mind as the prettiest sight he'd seen all his life. At this point, anything is possible. We already know that this world has natural energy, so who's to say gods don't exist here as well? I just hope none of them are as strong as that bitch, Kagaya, he grumbled and exhaled audibly. So what do we do about it? We make them think we're on their side, or at least willing to be. We need more information first. That is the priority. Got it. Fight the new guy with Sage Mode. Act like I only got this power now. Try to join their side, gather information. Then let's get to it. Kurama grinned and held out his fist. It's showtime. Naruto met it with his and grinned. Fights always excited him, and this was no exception. He'd make sure to enjoy every second of it. We kill him. The suggestion made by Ares caused Apollo's eyes to widen and Artemis to frown. What? He's innocent. You imbecile! Apollo shouted. Artemis has already killed the one possessing him. He moved to block Ares from getting closer to the unconscious blonde man and glared at him, daring him to try. Ares, what are you doing interfering with my hunt? Artemis asked, annoyance and anger visible in her silver eyes as she glared at his half-brother. I do not seem to recall granting you permission to do so, brother. Ares smirked and chuckled at both of them. He lowered his spear and planted it on the ground before he took off his helmet and held it to his side. He eyed her in amusement before it turned into a glare as his lips shifted into a snarl. "I do not need your permission, sister," he spat out venomously. The flame in his eyes seemed to intensify as he did. "Our father has tasked me with ensuring the death of the one you call prey." "I should have known father would send this buffoon." Artemis groaned internally at the blatant mistrust her father had all but implied when he sent Ares to do her job. He put on his helmet again before taking the spear he had stabbed into the ground before glaring at Apollo. "I suggest you move, brother, lest father finds out you've hindered his will." His smirk came back and he took a battle stance as he faced Apollo. "Or don't. Either way, the king of the gods himself has tasked me with this," he drawled mockingly, almost as if he was challenging Apollo to stay put. "And I will stop at nothing to accomplish it." "You don't scare me, Ares." Apollo returned the war god's glare with his own, now clutching his golden bow. "I've beaten you once before. I'll do it again." "Good, just how I like it." Before either of them could come to blows, however, the blonde man started to stir. Apollo ended his staring match with Ares and quickly knelt over to the side of the man. Thankfully, Ares just chose to observe as he did. Artemis came over to his side soon after. What happened?" the man groaned out, massaging his head before his eyes gained focus and saw the twins looming over him. "And who are you?" Apollo sighed in relief. He had said to his sister that he was sure the possession was over, but he still had some doubts. The voice of the man as he spoke erased his remaining doubts, however, as it didn't bear a single resemblance to the voice he had been using during their fight. "Take it easy, big guy. You're okay now," Apollo gently soothed him, face crinkled in delight. He assisted the man in sitting up, cautiously watching Ares for any sudden moves. Artemis watched as the man gathered his bearings and looked around, eyes wide as he stared at Apollo before looking around and finding her. His ocean blue orbs and her silver ones met, unease and curiosity filling their eyes respectively. "He's young." He was about the age of a veteran camper in Camp Half-Blood. His appearance might even pass off as an offspring of Apollo, or maybe Hermes, but she didn't feel a single bit of godliness in his blood at all. "Who are you, boy?" Artemis inquired. "Do you remember anything at all?" The blonde frowned and furrowed his brow. "I'm Naruto Uzumaki." When Naruto came to, he was flanked to the sides by two people. The man and woman he was fighting just a few minutes ago. Behind them, just a few steps away, was a man decked in full bronze armor. "He's probably the guy that wants to kill me." He remembered the plan and began to act all confused. He looked around the area and surveyed the destruction they'd caused in their fight. He then turned his eyes to the two archers. The man had golden hair a few shades lighter than his and was probably the most handsome guy he had ever seen. He was smiling kindly at him, and assisted him in sitting up from the ground. The woman watched as he did, and he shifted his gaze to her. She seemed to notice and met his eyes with her silver ones. Beautiful. He began to observe her a bit more than before. Her pale skin glowed slightly under the moonlight as she exuded an ethereal beauty he had not seen before. What drew the attention of his eyes the most, however, was the auburn hair she had tied back in a bun. Almost like Mom's. "Who are you, boy?" the pretty lady asked him. "Do you remember anything at all?" Naruto expected this question and smoothly shifted his face into a frown to show confusion. "I'm Naruto Uzumaki," he breathed out, making sure to sound as unsure as he possibly could. "Who are you?" The two looked at each other and seemingly had a silent conversation of their own before the man spoke up. "I'm Apollo, Naruto. This here's my sister, Artemis." "You mean like the sun god, Apollo, and the moon goddess, Artemis?" He chuckled. "Yes, like them. We have much to expo." Then, he was interrupted by the man behind them. "Step aside, Apollo," the man bellowed with a disgusting smirk. "Introduction's over. It's my turn. Get up, Uzumaki." Rude. Naruto did as he was told and stood up. He dusted himself off before cautiously shifting his stance to a more defensive one. "And who might you be?" he asked, trying to be as nonchalant as possible. "I guess I really should introduce myself." The man chuckled loudly. "I am Ares. Yes, like the god of war Ares." Ares pointed his spear at him. "Now, please fight back." Ares lunged at him at speed so fast that if he hadn't been a shinobi, he would have been skewered faster than he could blink. He was a shinobi though, and sidestepped the attack smoothly. If the man was surprised at his dodge, he didn't show it, and planted his heels on the ground to use the momentum he had built up to turn around and swing another strike at Naruto. I've gathered enough, Naruto. Use it. He felt the surge of purified natural energy within him and quickly entered sage mode. He half expected another assault of negative emotions, but it didn't come. He grinned and met the man's spear shaft with his hands. He caught the spear mid-swing and capitalized on the surprise of his opponent by swinging him into the air. Naruto then jumped to catch up to him before landing a roundhouse kick to send Ares spinning towards the ground. He deftly landed on his feet before eyeing the small crater that had formed from the impact. The two archers to the side had widened their eyes in disbelief at the speed of which he had been able to dispatch Ares with. Act surprised, kid. Remember the plan. He deliberately widened his eyes and turned to the two. What the hell happened to me? They were as confused as well, and didn't respond as Ares got up from the ground, face twisted in unholy anger. You fucking maggot, he shouted. I'll make sure you suffer. Naruto tensed as Ares rushed towards him again, patiently waiting to counterattack. Ares thrusted his spear towards him, but Naruto dodged and made to land an uppercut at his chin. Ares expected this counterattack and used his shield to bash Naruto's side in retaliation. Naruto flew into the air for a bit before he flipped and landed on his feet. He had no time for reprieve as a spear pierced through the air. He leapt to evade it, but Ares was already onto him. The man had materialized a sword that looked similar to the ones in the pictures of that Greek hero's book and was using it to try and slash him. Naruto used his arms to deflect some of the attacks, but the blows were strong. Every attack he met with his arms caused a small shockwave that slowly tore apart the area they were fighting in. Finish it now, Naruto. As Kurama shouted from within the seal, Naruto gracefully sidestepped a wild slash from Ares and kicked his shield with all the strength he could muster. The shield contorted around his feet like butter and Ares was sent flying again. Naruto didn't stop there, however. He dashed to Ares and landed an Uzumaki spinning heel drop on him, burying him into the ground and sending debris flying all around them. Artemis had been worried for the blonde when Ares had suddenly attacked him. Apollo looked like he was about to intervene when, to their surprise, the blonde had managed to dodge Ares' first strike. Apollo, she called out softly to her brother, who was as stupefied as she was. Are you sure he isn't possessed anymore? He spent a few seconds trying to find words before he said, I'm sure he isn't, sister. He dodged Ares' strike, brother. Why are you doubting me now? A mere mortal wouldn't be able to do that. They watched as Naruto caught Ares' spear and overpowered him easily. His eyes had orange outlines around them, and Artemis noticed how serene nature felt around him. She narrowed her eyes and stared at her brother once more. Yeah, he sighed. He's still not possessed, sister. I swear it on the sticks. A light boom of thunder signified the oath and Artemis waited for any divine retribution to come down upon Apollo, but no such thing happened. She sighed and erased any doubts. Even so, he's definitely not mortal. Artemis stroked her chin as she watched Naruto express his confusion at the things he had just done before Ares was upon him again. Should we help him, sis? Apollo asked. It doesn't look like he's the one that needs help. Ares is losing. Ares had never really been the best fighter among the gods. Despite being the god of war, he had been beaten numerous times throughout the ages by mortals and immortals alike. They were no strangers to seeing Ares get his ass handed to him, but this was just humiliating. A man with no godly blood running in his veins giving the god of war a thorough beatdown with such ease. Just what is he? She murmured. The power this man had was something that would definitely warrant the interest of her father in the Olympian Council. She had taken down the fox, which she assumed was the intruder Zeus had felt, and freed him from its control, but it seems that the possession had more than one side effect besides mild amnesia. The fact that Zeus had only chosen to watch as she and Apollo fought off and killed the beast only served to increase her confusion. Zeus had been adamant at hunting down the beast, but when they had finally tracked it down, no help came from him at all. Granted, they didn't ask for his help, but still, One would expect him to help with the way he had been acting these past few weeks. She was suddenly brought out of her thoughts when a crash along with a cloud of dust signaled the probable end of the fight. As the dust settled, the man named Naruto stood just a few meters away from a small crater where Ares was lying unmoving. Her brother's armor had dents all over it. His shield was all but unusable in its current condition, with a part of it torn off and lying a bit further away from the crater. The blonde hadn't so much as suffered a scratch from their brief fight. Not even the great Heracles had been able to do such a feat in the few tussles he had with the god of war. Surprisingly, he inspected himself in what appeared to be confusion. Artemis suspected that the abilities this man had shown just now were new to him. She noticed Apollo walking towards the blonde and moved to follow. "Hey, Naruto man," Apollo shouted, surprise still evident in his eyes. "What the hell was that?" "Oh, I'm not sure myself." He paused as if trying to recall something. "Apollo, right?" "Yep, so, how do you feel?" "Like I'm not myself at all. My body." He raised his arms and inspected them. "It's like I'm a different person now. What happened to me?" Apollo made to answer, but Artemis beat him to the punch. "You were possessed, Naruto," she said softly, trying to be as careful as possible when breaking it to him. "By a mythical being. Of what kind, we do not know." "Mythical? You mean like the Greek mythology, Egyptian mythology things?" She rolled her eyes. "Yes. Like those. You have to understand, Naruto, that Greek mythology is real." "Really real? Like, Zeus sitting on a golden throne in Olympus real?" This man was beginning to get on her nerves. It was like dealing with another Apollo. "Speaking of which." "Yeah, Naruto, exactly like that. And you do remember our names, right?" Apollo asked, a shit-eating grin present on his face. "Yeah, you're Apollo and you're Artemis." A look of realization dawned on him as he opened and closed his mouth like a fish for a few seconds. "You're gods." "Yep, and the guy you just fucked up?" Apollo pointed at the still unmoving body of Ares in the crater. "That's Ares, god of war. Congrats, kid, you beat a god." "You have to prepare for the consequences, Naruto," Artemis warned. "Beating a god comes with its own share of problems. Be careful. The abilities you've shown are not for mortals to wield, and some of us do not think lightly of those who overstep their bounds." "Like what? What'll happen to me now?" She sighed. "We were tasked with hunting you, but it seems that you were not at fault for a certain transgression you had committed a few weeks ago." "Wait, what? What did I do?" It was a sincere question, one that erased any lingering doubts she had about his state of mind. "It matters not. You didn't do it. Our hunt is done." She then looked pointedly towards the crater before continuing. "You defeated a god though, and while it is not our duty to bring you in, the other gods might not think the same. Be careful, Naruto. My sister and I are one of the more understanding gods. There are others who are much, much worse." The blonde just nodded. His eyes were glazed over in what she presumed to be shock. It was expected. Mortals do not take such revelations easily. She shook her head and turned to Apollo. "Take Ares back to Olympus," she ordered. "We must inform the council of what happened here." She turned to Naruto again as Apollo made his way to Ares. "You will not speak of the knowledge you've gained to anyone," she declared sternly, leaving no room for argument. "Endangering the secrecy of the Greek world will be met with severe punishment. Do not forget this. They really are gods, Kurama. Why can't it ever be easy with you, Naruto?" "Oi. I mean it, kid. Sometimes I wonder if your insane luck is offset by being such a trouble magnet." After the big revelation that gods and monsters of the Greek myths existed in real life, Naruto and Kurama had an emergency meeting inside Naruto's mind. If they were to operate safely in this world, they'd have to avoid drawing the ire of these gods. It's not that they were scared of them. It's just that they'd rather not cause more trouble than they already have by being in a world that isn't theirs. "So what do we do now?" A pause. "We ignore them as much as we can. We've shown that we are not hostile towards them, so it's possible that they'll ignore us in turn." "Is that even possible? If these gods rule the world, we'll be under their sights the entire time." "I don't think so. They had to track us down, didn't they?" As their conversation turned to a lull, Naruto picked up the pretty lady's voice. "Artemis, huh? Endangering the secrecy of the Greek world will be met with severe punishment. Do not forget this. She crossed arms and raised an eyebrow, which meant she was waiting for Naruto to respond in confirmation to whatever she had ordered. Yeah, I understand. He didn't, but Kurama had probably listened to her, so it didn't matter. He'd ask him about it later on. She looked at him intently for a few seconds before she sighed and nodded. Good, I really hope you do, said the goddess before moving towards Apollo, who had slung Ares' arms around his shoulders. Be well, Naruto. Hopefully, if we meet again, it'll be under better circumstances. Apollo waved with his free hand before disappearing in a brilliant flash of golden light. I hope we don't meet again. Remember my warning, Naruto. She nodded at him before she disappeared as well, a silvery mist taking her place. Well, that went well. He chuckled. You think? They surveyed the destruction they had caused in the area before shrugging and made to leave the park. A loud boom of thunder sounded from the skies just then. With the recent knowledge of gods and goddesses, Naruto could only guess that the cause of such a phenomenon was Zeus. Artemis hated council meetings. The near-incessant squabbling between the gods and goddesses over trivial matters never failed to annoy her. It also didn't help that Zeus would almost always let these run their course before calling for order in the council. Silence, bellowed the king of the gods. Cease your squabbling lest you warrant my wrath. This council meeting has now commenced. All the Olympians present in the meeting quieted down and bowed their heads slightly to Zeus. Apollo, Artemis, give your report. The twins shared a look before stepping forward. They knelt down to show respect to Zeus before taking their place in the center of the room. Father, I have completed my hunt. The culprit who had intruded into your domain has been killed, Artemis spoke respectfully. And what of the identity of this culprit you've killed? Zeus inquired, resting his chin upon his palms. Apollo looked at Artemis before meeting their father's gaze. The culprit was a nature spirit that took the form of a fox. It didn't seem to have a connection with Gaia, other than the natural energy it seemed to produce. A fox? Zeus repeated incredulously. Yes, father, it had possessed a mortal named Naruto Uzumaki, but we were able to free him from its grasps and destroy it. Apollo replied, body tensing nervously. At the sound of that name, no one noticed Athena as she flinched. Naruto? Single quote. Oh, and where is this mortal? Everyone in the room could now see Zeus' interest in the mortal. Artemis hesitated, which let Apollo beat her to the punch and replied, he is alive and well, father. The possession affected him in more ways than one, but the spirit that inhabited him is truly gone. And Ares? That question froze the twins. The absence of Ares hadn't been noticed by most council members. It wasn't rare for the bloodthirsty god to skip out on a couple of meetings, so they didn't mind as much. But if Zeus had been expecting him to be present, something must have gone wrong for him not to be. He engaged the mortal in a battle, Artemis responded. Ares appeared after we had just finished off the spirit and attempted to kill the man named Naruto. Confusion rapidly spread among the council. If Ares had fought the mortal, then where was he? Did he not win? Needless to say, the council was now intrigued. That doesn't answer my question, daughter, Zeus softly said, eyes narrowed as he stared at his children. The mortal defeated him in combat, father, Apollo finally blurted out. Ares is currently recovering in his temple. When this piece of news made their way into the minds of the gods and goddesses in attendance, the whole council exploded. That imbecile got his ass handed to him again, huh? Hephaestus murmured as he chuckled loudly, which made Aphrodite glare at him. This only served to increase his joy, as he transitioned into full-blown laughter. As the noise in the council reached its highest, Zeus exhaled audibly and called for order once again. Enough, he thundered. If Ares has been beaten by the mortal, why are you two left unharmed? The twins gained a look of confusion as they briefly glanced at each other. Father, I'm afraid I don't understand, Artemis responded. It wasn't our duty to kill the mortal. We were to only determine whether the beast who intruded upon your domain is of Gaia's spawn or not. Is that so? Zeus voiced out, sarcasm laid heavily upon his words. A mortal with enough power to defeat a god, an Olympian no less. And you think it's not your duty to do so? Artemis couldn't respond. The power in her father's voice saturated the atmosphere of the council room. The tension was palpable as the other Olympians watched in silence. Then, Apollo took a step forward and bent his knees. "We did not deign him to be a threat, Lord Zeus. Yet I did, which is why I sent Ares. Did he not inform you of this?" Apollo bit his lip. "He did, father, bu. Then explain to me you didn't step in to detain him. Explain why you only stood and watched as he defeated a fellow god, your brother." Artemis and Apollo trembled as the rage of their father shook Olympus. Thunderstorms could be heard raging all around the skies outside the council room. "Brother, calm down," Poseidon calmly chided. "They clearly thought the man was innocent. Trust the judgment of your children." Zeus' face constricted in restrained anger for a split second before softening to a resigned look. He observed the others who had witnessed his brief fit. Most were wide-eyed and tensed. Everyone, even Dionysus, was awake and fully alert. He sighed. "I apologize for my outburst. Let's get back to the issue at hand." "Of course, father," Artemis responded weakly. Zeus nodded. "Explain this mortal's abilities. How did he defeat Ares?" Artemis searched her memories for a moment before she spoke. "He defeated Ares with pure hand-to-hand combat. He didn't seem to have retained the magical capabilities of the fox spirit that possessed him, but his raw strength alone can be compared to Heracles himself." This raised a few eyebrows in the council. "But you have yet to call him a demigod. Is he not one of godly blood, Artemis?" Poseidon inquired. She bit her lip and hesitated, as if unsure of the answer she had. Before responding, "I felt no such godliness in his blood. He is definitely not a demigod. If he is of godly origin, then he is not one of ours." Apollo had gotten up from his knees and turned to Poseidon as well. "The spirit's possession has left its mark on him, uncle. He has clearly gained its strength." "And you're sure you killed this spirit?" Artemis looked annoyed at the doubt in his voice, but quickly masked her emotions. "Yes, uncle, I delivered the killing blow myself." Poseidon stared at the two for a brief moment before reluctantly nodding and relented. Zeus raised his hands and the attention was drawn to him once more. "Now we decide what to do with the mortal. Speak your thoughts, fellow Olympians." At Zeus' behest, the members of the council looked around to see if anyone is willing to voice out their opinion. A few shuffled anxiously as if they had something to say, but no one made a move to go first. Suddenly, Athena stood up. "Father, if I may," she spoke her first words since the beginning of the meeting. "I would recommend just keeping an eye on this Naruto." "Oh, explain your reasoning, daughter." Zeus gestured for her to continue. "It appears as though this mortal has no ties to the mythical world. If we are to play our hand correctly, we may yet draw him into our side." At this suggestion, most of the council nodded in agreement with a few abstaining from reacting. No one disagreed with the statement, however, as Zeus mulled on it. "A sound idea. How do you suggest we do this?" Zeus inquired. "I suggest we send one of ours to keep an eye on him. And if possible, try to steer his loyalty to our cause." Once again, this was well received by the council. It would do them a favor by alleviating Zeus' paranoia if the mortal is kept under watch, and even more if he chooses to side with Olympus. "I see. Then so be it," Zeus exclaimed with finality. "The mortal will be kept under watch. We will also actively attempt to draw him into our side." He looked over the council members before settled his eyes on Artemis, who had since taken a seat after finishing her report. "Artemis, you shall be tasked with keeping an eye on him on a personal level. Ensure that he maintains the secrecy of our existence. You shall also be tasked with bringing him under Olympus' banner." He then turned his eyes to Apollo. "Apollo, you shall watch over them at all times. You are to serve as a backup for your sister if she ever needs it." Artemis widened her eyes as anger flooded her system. She didn't see why she had to be the one to watch over that man like some warden. She had been separated from her hunt for far too long now. It also didn't help that he was just that, a man. "Father, with all due respect, please reconsider," she pleaded. "My hunters need me. I cannot accept such a task that would separate me from them indefinitely, and with a man no less." "This is an order, Artemis," Zeus boomed. "Think of this as punishment for disregarding the safety of your fellow Olympian." "Apollo." At the sound of his name, Apollo flinched. He reluctantly tore his eyes off the floor and met his father's gaze. Yes, father. Do you understand your task? Of course, father, by your will. Damn it, sis. Just do as he says. Zeus shifted his piercing gaze to Artemis and narrowed his eyes. And you, Artemis? He asked. Do you understand? She clenched her fists and gritted her teeth before relenting, and as she breathed out, any trace of emotion on her face had been cleared. I understand, Lord Zeus. If I may, father, Athena spoke up, much to the surprise of those in attendance. I do not think Artemis is suited to the task of drawing in that man's loyalty. This remark blindsided Artemis as she shot a scathing glare at her sister, but Athena just looked at her meaningfully. Relax, I'm trying to help. This silent reassurance from her somewhat calmed Artemis down as Zeus turned to Athena. And who do you think is Aphrodite? At his flippant suggestion, Athena's eyes twitched, though no one really noticed. Aphrodite is just as likely to turn him against us, given her tendency to force mortals into sleeping with her, Athena responded, ignoring the scandalized look said love goddess gave her. I would like to nominate myself as the diplomat. I think that among all of us, I would have the best chance of succeeding in this task. No one in the council, not even Poseidon, could disagree with her reasoning. She wasn't called the Greek goddess of wisdom for nothing after all. Zeus nodded his head in confirmation and said, Then so it shall. Artemis and Apollo shall watch him at all times, and you shall turn him to our side. Good, is that all? When no one else voiced their opinions, Zeus sighed and addressed them all. Then you are dismissed. Be vigilant. He raised his hand and disappeared into a cloud of electricity. One by one, the other Olympians followed him, leaving behind Apollo, Artemis, and Athena. Apollo sighed. I'll go check up on Ares, sis. Let's talk later, Kay? Artemis didn't respond, only choosing to nod her head. In a bright flash, Apollo had left the room, leaving only her and Athena, who was making her way to her throne. Sister, Athena greeted warmly. An eventful meeting, is it not? Artemis frowned and turned to look at her. Why'd you help me, Athena? She sighed and smiled resignedly. It wouldn't do well for you to lose your temper here. As for your question, I just didn't want you to fail. I never fail, sister, she bit out. But you would've. Do you really think you can sway a man into siding with you? The maiden goddess who was known for turning men into wild animals just for stumbling upon your camp. Artemis tried to find words to retort with, but she couldn't. Her sister was right. She lowered her head, avoiding Athena's eyes. Thank you, sister, she muttered softly. Athena waved her hand dismissively towards her. Don't worry about it, just focus on watching over him and leave the diplomatic tasks to me, okay? I understand. February 4th, a Tuesday. It was Naruto's first day in university, and he was excited. Yes, Naruto was excited to go to school. But he wasn't excited to go to school because he wanted to learn. Oh no, he was excited because Athena would be accompanying him on his first day. Naruto had a tiny crush on her. Scratch that, Naruto had a huge crush on her. So huge that Kurama would not be at fault for thinking Naruto's priorities might be compromised. Naruto, you sure seem excited, said Kurama, trying to be as nonchalant as possible. Of course I am, Kurama. It's my first day at school and someone's going to be there with me. Naruto's smile was as wide as it could possibly be. He was all but bouncing on his feet in excitement. During his first time attending the academy, he had been jealous of the other kids and how they had their parents to accompany them around. Meanwhile, he had to face the anxiety and embarrassment of coming to school and meeting with other kids alone. It was lonely. I see. Kurama didn't have it in him to remind Naruto of their main objective in this world. It also didn't help that it was because of him that Naruto never experienced this kind of thing before. Guiltily, he dropped the subject and filed it away for later. Just remember the plan, kid. Learn up on Greek mythology as much as possible. Yeah, you don't have to keep telling me, furball, Naruto droned on as he finished his cup of instant ramen, grabbed his jacket, and went out the door. He walked through the streets of New York City, observing the people he was passing by. He turned to a corner and made to cross the street when he suddenly felt a presence observing him. He looked to his left and saw a familiar-looking girl with auburn hair and silver eyes. Artemis. Why is she here? Kurama muttered from within the seal. Keep your guard up, Naruto. Wake me up if you need me. He met her stare with his own and began walking towards her. She didn't move from her spot even as Naruto stopped just a meter away from her. Artemis? He greeted with uncertainty. He and Kurama had decided that associating with these beings were more trouble than they were worth, so they've decided to just try to ignore them and focus on finding a way out of this world. If they did encounter them again, the plan was to not draw too much attention. Naruto, she greeted curtly and nodded. Naruto felt awkward. He had made his way to her to ask her what she was doing here, but she just exuded such an untouchable presence that he couldn't find the right words to say. Rubbing the back of his head, he just threw caution away and improvised. What are you doing here? He asked. You look different. Artemis was wearing a silver coat with a plain black t-shirt inside, along with faded gray jeans and sneakers. An extremely different outfit from the one she was wearing the day before. Observing, she answered. If he wasn't unnerved by her stare before, he was now. He shook it off and sighed. Okay, well, I'm going to school now, so have fun with that. He turned around and resumed his walk to the university, but after a few steps, he stopped in his tracks and looked behind him. Artemis had followed him. He raised an eyebrow at this but ignored it and started moving again. Alas, so did she. If he took a step forward, she took a step forward. If he stopped, she stopped. She kept the same distance as they had before, never coming nearer nor farther than that. After a couple of minutes, Naruto turned around. He was pretty annoyed now. Is this what Sasuke felt back in the academy? Okay, look, can you please tell me why you're following me like a stalker? He asked. You're a goddess, don't you have anything better to do? I do, she answered. No emotion from her face whatsoever. Naruto glared at her, and when it seemed like she had no intention of answering any of his questions, he turned around before huffing and walking a lot faster this time. Unfortunately, so did she. This continued until Naruto arrived at the designated rendezvous point set by Athena when she had accompanied him to enroll. He checked his watch and absent-mindedly noted that he was early by about 3 minutes. He looked behind and saw Artemis sitting on another bench, still watching him. He closed his eyes and breathed in deeply. Calm down, Naruto. She's a goddess. You don't want to pick a fight with them. As the clock ticked down to 8 a.m., he began to look around for any sight of Athena. Hi, Naruto. He heard a voice from his right and turned to see Athena. He smiled, as beautiful as ever. There you are, Athena. Just in time, he chuckled exuberantly as he jokingly tapped his watch. You ready? She laughed. I should be asking you that question, you know? Well, you know me. I'm always ready. He stood up and walked by Athena's side as they made their way to Naruto's first day. They didn't notice the wide-eyed goddess who had watched their interaction just a few meters away. So how have you been these past 3 days? Athena inquired. Anything interesting? Oh, you know, the same thing I do every day, he answered. Meeting and fighting gods. Oh, I'm also looking for a job now. Need to pay rent and all that. Is that so? What kind of job are you thinking of? I'm not sure yet, but I'll be sure to tell you when I find out. Oh, and have you heard abo? Artemis had just watched as Naruto and Athena made small talk with each other. Athena, huh? Real subtle, sister. The way Naruto felt comfortable around her sister, it almost seemed like they've known each other for quite a while now. Artemis would have to talk to her sister later. For now though, she would be attending school. When she had met Athena after their conversation in the council room, they had discussed with each other the best course of action when observing the mortal. They, Athena, had concluded that for Artemis to be able to properly watch Naruto at all times, the easiest way would be to attend the same school as him. It had taken a few persuasive remarks from Athena before she had agreed to the plan. She would take the same program as him, BS in applied psychology, take the same classes as him and join any extracurricular activities that he would join. In short, she would have to become his stalker. Athena had adamantly warned her from actively approaching Naruto, however. Leave it to me, she said. And while Artemis didn't mind it at all, and was even thankful for it, it did seem a bit suspicious. Could it be? She muttered. The few times Athena would act this way was when she had found a suitable partner to make a brainchild with. It was odd though, from what she knew, Athena never got as close to them as she was now with Naruto. Suspicious indeed. Ms. Selena, she was interrupted by her professor, who had just called her name out. It's your turn to introduce yourself. Please, come up front. The old man smiled, probably to try and make her feel comfortable, but she ignored it and wordlessly got up to take her place in front of the class. She saw Naruto a few rows from the back giving her a thumbs up. It was their first class of the day. After Athena had walked away with Naruto, she followed them for a while before she got bored and made her way to this classroom. They had arrived just before the bell rang, and Naruto's over-the-top reaction upon seeing her almost made her chuckle. Almost. My name is Phoebe Selena, she said, trying to recall how her classmates had done their introductions while absent-mindedly staring at Naruto's spiky blonde hair. I come from a Greek family. I am 18 years old. That is all I'm willing to share. Thank you. She bowed and turned to her professor, who had a confused look on his face as he alternated his gaze between her and Naruto, who looked flustered, a few times before sighing. Take a seat, Ms. Selena. Also, class, I'm not against you guys having a relationship, but, he scratched his cheek awkwardly as he gave a pointed look at her before directing it to Naruto. Please try to rein it in until after class ends, please. Artemis gained a look of confusion and tried to recall if she said something wrong. She had only spoken her piece and stared at Naruto the entire time, which by the way was because he was the only one she had been acquainted with. Oh, she resisted the urge to palm her face as she sat back down to her seat. She sneaked a glance at Naruto, who was still flustered. He seemed to notice her gaze and blushed a bit more before intentionally avoiding it. She sighed and stood up, aiming to nip this issue in the bud before it could even begin. Mr. Willis, I would like to make it perfectly clear that I am not in a relationship with Mr. Uzumaki, she declared before taking her seat once again, blocking their voices from her mind as she instead thought back to her hunters. Oh, I had thought. Whatever. Next up, Mr. Summers. She just hoped that this task would end soon. She hated studying. Naruto stretched his muscles as he got out of a convenience store. He had just come from an eventful day at school. In his hand was a paper bag filled to the brim with instant ramen. He began making his way back to his apartment, looking at a few stores and trying to find any that were looking for new employees. I need a job. The police are starting to search for robbers when my money shadow clones dispelled. Naruto had, until recently, been using his shadow clones to transform them into money bills and use them to buy stuff. He didn't think of what would happen if they began poofing out of existence. The police were now in high alert after a large amount of money disappeared in a literal puff of smoke overnight. Since Naruto didn't want to cause any further trouble, he had decided to look for a part-time job. He hasn't found one yet, but it's only been a day. There's bound to be more. At least, that's what he keeps telling himself. As Naruto passed by a liquor store, he suddenly noticed a familiar-looking old man exiting the store. He squinted his eyes and saw that it was that old man. The one that took care of him. Oi, old man, wait up, Naruto called over as he caught up to him, still cradling the paper bag. The old man turned to look at him, and as he got nearer, the old man's eyes lit up in recognition. Oh, it's you, the kid from before, he exclaimed. What are you doing here? Hey, old man, I'm actually studying here in the city now, Naruto answered, stopping a foot away from him. What about you, and what's your name, old man? Hey, I work in the city, kid. Name's Owen Reeves. He held out his hand and Naruto shook it joyfully. I'm Naruto Uzumaki. I never got to thank you for what you did before. Naruto rubbed the back of his head, grinning as he did. Don't worry about it. I like helping kids. You said you study in the city now? Yep, NYU. I also live right around the block. Ah, I see. So what happened? Last we met, you couldn't speak English to save your life. He joked, and Naruto laughed nervously. Ah, well you see, he stumbled on his words for a bit before Owen chuckled. Don't worry about it, I was kidding. So what are you doing out this late? Oh, I was looking for a job actually. Owen nodded. Have you found one? No, not yet. Naruto shrugged and sighed. It's kinda hard to look for a job around here. especially for a kid like me. Owen stroked his chin and eyed Naruto curiously. Say, you wouldn't mind working in a bar, would you? A bar? Naruto tilted his head. A bar? Like a bartender? Owen shook his head and chuckled. No, nothing of that sort just yet. You'd be cleaning the place, washing the dishes, that sort of thing. Oh, I guess that could work. You know a place, old man? He inquired. As a matter of fact, I own a place. All right, class, now that we've finished the introductions week, it's time for the fun part. Projects. Professor Willis chirped jubilantly, grin widening even more at the sound of the groans of his pupils as he picked up a few papers from his desk and distributed them to each column. This will be done in pairs, so find yourselves with a partner and get to it. The submission will be on Friday. It had been about a week since class had started, and more professors have been giving out work for students to finally do. Naruto took his assigned paper from the outstretched hands of the student in front of him. As the bell rang, the students got up and began looking for a partner. Naruto bit his lip as he got off his chair and made his way to Artemis, who was also blankly looking at him. Hey Artemis, he began, absent-mindedly rubbing the back of his head. You want to pair up with me? She looked at him dryly, as if the answer to his question was obvious, and replied, Did you even have to ask? Naruto had prepared to be rejected instantly, but her reply made him do a double take as his eyes widened. Wait, what, was that a yes? Of course we'll pair up, Naruto. You never had a choice in the first place. She sighed and motioned for Naruto to come closer. As he did, she whispered, and if you did try to pair up with someone else, I'd just use my powers to make everyone think you paired up with me instead. Okay, so how do we do this? He forced a smile, though inside he was pretty shaken. She can be really scary. Artemis looked over the papers she and Naruto were given and shook her head. I have no idea. I'll be trusting you to guide us through this, Mr. Uzumaki. She tried to keep a straight face as she jokingly bowed her head, but in the end, she couldn't help but laugh lightly. Naruto froze in shock as Artemis laughed. Her silvery laugh along with the way her face shifted in amusement made its waves in his mind and he couldn't help but think of how beautiful she seemed. Perfect. Then again, she is a goddess after all. Artemis noticed his pause and stopped laughing. She narrowed her eyes. Why do I feel like poking you with an arrow, Naruto? He was shaken out of his stupor by the threat and frantically shook his head. Wait, no, I didn't do anything. Really? Really? Anyways, focus on the project. What's the plan? She stroked her chin and seemingly thought deeply on it before she answered. I really don't know. I don't listen to any of the lectures at all. Naruto facepalmed. Hard, just my luck, a deadbeat goddess. Is this how Sakura and the others felt with me? I thought gods were supposed to know everything? He whispered accusingly, pointing at Artemis. Don't be stupid, Naruto. That's Athena's job, she answered flippantly, not even deigning to look at him as she did. Naruto growled. Calm down, Naruto. She's a goddess. She's a goddess. She's a goddess. She's a goddess. He sighed and scratched his cheek before hefting his bag over his shoulders. Fine, whatever. Do you at least have anything I can call you with? I'm a goddess, Naruto. Just call my name and, if it's important, I'll be there. Right, I'll call you if I figure anything out. Later. Yeah. Naruto turned around and made his way out of the room. He and Athena had plans to eat lunch together today, and he won't let one lazy goddess ruin his mood. Naruto looked at the paper he was holding before looking back up to the building in front of him. The blank, huh? He muttered. He slapped his cheeks lightly and breathed out. Right, let's do it. He entered the building and was immediately assaulted by the smell of cookies and coffee. He saw Owen serving a tray of cookies and milk to a young girl, about the age of 9 by the looks of it. Wait, I thought this was a bar? Oi, old man, I'm here, he shouted. The old man, Owen, looked at him and smiled. Oh, Naruto, how's your day? Naruto sighed and walked to the counter. Oh, you know, boring school stuff. Owen chuckled and ruffled the hair of the young girl before turning to Naruto and made his way to the back of the counter. Yeah, I can only imagine. So, he wiped a few of the used glasses on the counter and eyed Naruto curiously. You here for the job? Naruto grinned and rubbed the back of his head. Yeah, if you'll have me. He looked around the place and briefly observed the little girl Owen had served a moment ago before turning back to him and asked, I thought this was a bar. Who's the girl? Hey, it might look like a bar, but no one really comes here to get drunk, kid. Owen smiled lightly despite what he had just said. As for the girl, she's someone who needed help once. Now she visits regularly. Needed help? He repeated. He looked at the girl once more. She was oblivious to their conversation, choosing to enjoy the cookies Owen had served her. A few strands of her brown hair popped out from her hood, and her eyes were a vibrant red. She seemed happy enough, but Naruto knew better than most about what could be hidden inside a person's true feelings. Yep, the same way you needed help back then when, you know. Naruto made a face of understanding and nodded, turning to Owen again. I see, but wait, he paused, confusion taking over as he mulled over one thing. If no one comes here to drink, how do you earn money? Owen laughed. The sheer intensity of his laugh only served to confuse Naruto even further. Oh man, that never gets old. Huh? What? I don't earn money from this bar, kid, he answered with a grin, eyes full of mirth boring into Naruto's puzzled ones. What? His features shifted from confusion into sheer disbelief, eyes widening hilariously. Then why did you offer me a job? Just because I don't earn money from this dump, doesn't mean I don't have money, kid, he answered, clearly enjoying the roller coaster of emotions Naruto had just gone through. Huh? I own this place, which means I don't pay rent to a landlord. The other fees are paid for by the Hearth charity organization. I get my allowance from the donations they give out once every few months. I literally only earn. Hearth charity. Yeah, they've been helping me a lot throughout the years ever since they found out I've been helping out homeless children. They're the reason why this bar is anything but that. Ooh, that's convenient. Tell me about it. Remember, kid, don't look a gift horse in the mouth. Aw, gimme a sec, K? He sighed, and as he finished cleaning up the glasses and putting them back into their proper storage, he took a seat beside Naruto. So, he placed his hands on the counter and smiled at Naruto. You ready for the job? Oh, Naruto shook a few irrelevant thoughts away from his mind and nodded resolutely. Definitely. So what do I do? Hey, well, you can start by cleaning up after the little miss there. Come to the back once you're done. He looked back to where the girl had been sitting and found that she had left. Where'd she go? Isn't it a bit late for someone like her to go outside alone? Beats me. I used to offer to take her home, but she never accepts. She said she lives nearby, though. Don't think about it too much. Just get to work. He looked back worriedly to the now vacant seat of the girl before he sighed. Yeah, got it, boss. Finally, Naruto breathed out. He had just finished his shift working for Owen, who was a slave driver in all but name. It seems that the past couple of decades working alone had made the owner of the bar extremely ecstatic at finally having an employee. He was worked to the bone, being ordered to carry and rearrange everything from the stocks to the tables that he wanted to be placed in a different spot. After 5 hours of non-stop hard labor, Owen had allowed him to leave, giving him a bundle of cash and forced him to keep it, saying, "Think of it as gratitude for doing everything I told you to do." Naruto walked down the now familiar streets of Manhattan as he made his way to his apartment building. He was thinking about the project due on Friday when his eyes caught a colorful store signage that signified that the store was still open this late into the evening. It was a thrift store, and various apparels of different styles were lined up in the shop. Maybe I should buy new clothes for the date. He felt his pockets for the bundle of cash he now had, and wordlessly walked into the store. I should. Inside, he found that the store was even bigger than he had thought. Walls were lined up with various pieces of clothing, and the lines of clothing he had seen from the outside stretched even further into the back of the store. The one employee manning the store didn't seem to care when he entered, so he took that as a sign that the store was definitely open. What should I even wear? A suit, maybe? With his first lead, he looked around for the suits section in the massive room. A couple of minutes later, he found it in the furthest left from the entrance. He eyed the price tags taped onto the section and sighed. The prices were extremely affordable, and he had cash to spare. As he browsed through the articles of clothing, he stumbled upon an orange suit jacket. All right. He picked it up and inspected it. It had a simple, but elegant blanket plaid pattern, giving the suit a dignified and elegant look, at least to Naruto. The jacket is the same length all around. It had vents at either side. There are 2 pockets on one side, 1 pocket on the other in breast pocket. He was about to look for a changing room to try the suit on when a cough from behind startled him. "What are you doing?" a female voice asked. Naruto was startled and turned around. He sighed when he saw who the voice belonged to. Artemis, arms crossed and brows raised, was looking at him dryly. "Did you really have to surprise me like that?" "Honestly," Naruto muttered before scratching his cheek and blushing lightly. "I'm looking for new clothes." "Oh, if you're looking for new clothes, why are you holding an abomination in your hands?" she asked pointedly, though her slight smirk betrayed her amusement at the sight of the hideous orange suit jacket. "Oi, this jacket is great." "An orange jacket? Great? Really, Naruto? It's not that bad, I don't have to explain myself to you." "Excuse me, please tone it down. It's really getting late for such noises, sweetie." The cashier chided him. She didn't even look up from the magazine she was reading as she did. "Sorry, ma'am," he complied, sticking his tongue out to Artemis, who just rolled her eyes. "What do you even need the clothes for? A date?" At the mention of the date, Naruto became fidgety. Another light blush appeared on his cheeks. And no, I just wanted some new choices is all." He tried to hide it, but Artemis just shook her head in amusement. "Yeah, and I'm definitely not the moon goddess. You suck at lying, Naruto." "No, I don't." "And you're as childish as they come," she added jokingly, sighing in disappointment. "Men. I don't want to hear that from you," he retorted. "What are you doing here anyway?" "Oh, that. I saw you entering this store. I just followed you in." "Okay, but why would you follow me in?" "Why wouldn't I follow you in?" Naruto eyed her weirdly. Truthfully, he was more than a bit creeped out by how this goddess seemed to be stalking him. First, she appears to have enrolled in his university. She's even in the same class too. Then, she follows him inside a sketchy store late into the night. "You're not stalking me, are you?" he asked nervously. "Is it not obvious? I'm definitely stalking you." "Why?" She sighed. "Orders from Olympus. That's all you need to know. Who's the unfortunate girl you've set your eyes on?" "Oi. Let me guess. It's that pretty girl from Peace and Conflict Studies, isn't it?" Naruto blushed. Busted. "And no. Why would you think that?" She just stared at him blankly as he shifted uncomfortably. "Okay, fine, yeah, she's the girl." He reluctantly gave up the truth, face reddening even more in embarrassment, before glaring back at her. "How do you even know about her? Are you dense? I've been observing you since day one, Naruto." "Please stop. Also, stay away from her, ya hear?" He exaggeratedly rolled up his sleeves in an attempt to mockingly intimidate Artemis. "If you do any of those godly illusion techniques, I'll get really mad." She waved dismissively at him. "Of course. So you're planning on wearing an orange suit to your date? Is that bad? If you think it's good that she'll feel embarrassed being seen with an orange suit wearing idiot like you, then no. It's not that bad." "Oi, take that back. And orange isn't that bad. It's bright, like me." "No, Naruto, it's definitely bad." "And how would you know? All you wear is silver." He points accusingly at her, but she just scoffs it off. "I'm a goddess. We're supposed to know everything." But you said that was Athena's job." "What? I don't recall saying that." She comically widened her eyes in mock surprise at Naruto's retort, but it falls apart as she started chuckling. "Grr, stop messing with me," he growled half-heartedly. "This woman's gonna be the death of me, I swear." "Whatever. So if you think you know better, then what should I wear?" He crossed his arms and glared challengingly at Artemis. "Well, first off," she began. She snatched the hideous piece of clothing from Naruto's hand before he could react and disintegrated it right in front of him, much to his dismay. "No orange." "What did you do?" he shouted in anger. "Sweetie, any more noise and I'll have to ask you to leave, is that clear?" "Why yes, ma'am, I'm sorry." He apologized to the cashier who was now manicuring her fingernails, before he shook his hands menacingly at Artemis and mouthed, "I'll get you for this." She ignored him and turned around, motioning for him to follow. "Come, I'll show you why you should never challenge a goddess." Artemis eyed Naruto as he exited the changing room wearing the pieces of clothing she had picked out for him during the last hour or so. He was now wearing a plain shirt, and on top of the shirt was a chic vest with 7 buttons. The jacket she had picked out for him was a perfectly tailored fit. It had a stylish casual look, with the fabric being a plain black. His pants were of the same simple black fabric like his jacket. The 4 buttons of his single-breasted jacket had been left unbuttoned, as per her instructions, and gave him a more casual look. She nodded in satisfaction. "There, now you look less of a wild beast and a bit more like a proper human." "Do you really have to insult me every time?" he sighed. He had to agree though, Artemis was much better than him at this. "Doesn't this seem a bit weird for you to be good at? I thought you hated men? Why are you so good at this?" "I think most people forget who I have for a brother," she sighed. Her brother was eccentric. He was always ahead of his time when it came to fashion trends. If you live with him as your sibling for a few thousand years, you're bound to pick something up. "Apollo does seem a bit odd sometimes," he said. "The blonde man always seemed so upbeat and outgoing. He really was the sun itself personified." "Don't let him hear that from you. Anyways, I think we're done here." She was satisfied with her work, even if it was with a man. It took a bit more effort to get it done, but her sister would definitely love his outfit. Hopefully, Athena can count this as her favor being repaid in full. Naruto hummed in content at how comfortable the clothes seemed to fit him and looked to Artemis. "Thank you for this, really," he said, eyes filled with immense gratitude before he grinned impishly. "You know, you might really annoy me sometimes, but you truly do make a good friend. For a goddess." Artemis frowned and scoffed at his words. "Don't get any ideas. Who said we're friends? I'm only doing this because you challenged me, nothing else." She didn't know why, but she really wanted to punch that grin off his face. It was making her feel uncomfortable, and she didn't like being uncomfortable at all. Yeah, he said resignedly. He didn't push any further and just turned towards the cashier. She might just punch his lights out if he did. Right then. "I'll go pay for this now." She nodded and went ahead of him, making her way towards the door. A few minutes later and Naruto followed suit, carrying 2 paper bags of clothing. He saw her and made his way just a couple of steps in front of her. "So now that that's over with, what now?" he asked offhandedly as he started walking aimlessly through the empty streets, with Artemis following in stride. "Oh, I know, we can do the project." Artemis looked at the moon above them, her chariot being driven by her godly will. She sighed, "I guess I have the time." Quote. Naruto grinned, "Great, and I just happen to know the perfect place for an all-nighter, too. If you even dare suggest your apartment, I will shoot you where you stand." He scoffed, "As if, I'm not that stupid." "Ah, but you are stupid," she said calmly before her eyes turned harsh. "Lead the way, but if you ever so much as do something suspicious, you won't live to regret it." "Alright, geez, you don't have to say it like that, you know," he retorted. He was promptly ignored by the goddess, who only motioned for him to start. "Go on." As Naruto led Artemis through the streets of Manhattan, he absent-mindedly looked at the moon of this world. He didn't have great experiences with moons, especially considering how Madara had used one to trap the world in an eternal illusion. But the moon of this world was beautiful. He sneaked a glance at the goddess who was that moon personified. "It's really beautiful." Then, a sudden question came to his mind. "Hey, Artemis," he called out. She looked at him questioningly. "What now?" "I've been wondering," he said, pointing at the moon above. "If you're here, then who's up there?" "Me," she deadpanned. "Ah, right, gods. So how does it feel?" The amount of time Artemis had spent talking to men in the last 4 millennia combined would probably still not be as much as the time she has already spent talking to the blonde beside her. He just doesn't shut up at all. It baffled Artemis that she was so amicable to the idea of spending time with him, even if it was an order from Olympus. She could barely stand Apollo, yet here she was, tolerating a mortal who was even more of a buffoon than him. It also surprised her how she didn't really mind his disrespect towards her. At first, she had held her temper in because of her mission to observe him, and to assist Athena's efforts. Now, she rather enjoyed their banter every so often. He would never look at her with lustful eyes like most other mortals do, nor does he show any tendencies of acting like a pig. For someone to look so much like Apollo to be the complete opposite of him, sans the stupidity, it amused her endlessly. So if that's the case, then wouldn't introducing mortals to your world help curb the amount of monsters? Naruto had been spit-firing questions after questions since they started walking, with her answering a couple that she was allowed to divulge absent-mindedly. Not all mortals can see monsters, Naruto, she answered. And with the advent of science, belief in myths and religion are slowly fading. But you said that once people forget a god's existence, they fade away. Wouldn't it make you guys more powerful if more people believed you exist? It's not that easy, she sighed. Not all mortals are able to comprehend the existence of what they deem to be fantasies and myths. They fear what they do not understand, and that makes them dangerous. You make it sound like you fear them discovering your world. Your kind are formidable creatures. If humanity gains knowledge of the mythical world, they might someday just figure out a way to remove us from power. Naruto smiled. Humans did have a habit of doing the impossible. Even back in their world, if you told Naruto 3 years ago that he would beat the primordial goddess of chakra, he would have laughed at you before you can even finish saying the entire thing. He did, though. With the help of Team 7, Kagaya Otsutsuki had beaten, by a group of mortals no less. Granted, shinobi really couldn't be considered normal humans. He looked up to the building signage in front of them and stopped. We're here. Artemis was shaken out of her autopilot mode as Naruto turned his head towards her with a grin. She saw the building in front of them and flinched slightly. Oh no. Welcome to the blank. It's where I'm working now, see? He declared cheekily and didn't seem to have noticed what had just happened to her. He made his way to the entrance, as Artemis debated on whether to leave or not. In the end, she sighed and followed. It wouldn't do well for her job if she just up and left Naruto here. It would be suspicious too, and would probably lead to more questions than she'd like. She braced herself for what was to come. Oi, old man, I'm back, Naruto shouted. The old man in question was currently shifting the channel on the television nonstop, lazily clicking on the remote in his hand. Oh, Naruto, what are you doing here? He lazily inquired, not even looking away from the television. You up for more work? Naruto scoffed. You wish. We're here as customers, so serve up. Owen perked up at what he had just said. He turned his gaze to Naruto and raised an eyebrow at the girl behind him. Oh, you brought a date? Artemis hadn't bothered to put up an illusion over her form. She was in her most preferred appearance, aged at around 18 years old. When she had interrogated this man, Owen, if she remembered correctly, she had assumed a form aged a bit older than that. She just hoped the slight age difference would be enough for her to not be recognized. And who might you be, young lady? Owen asked with a suspicious amount of interest, but no recognition flared up from his gaze. He didn't recognize me? Artemis eyed the old man carefully for any signs of recognition and replied, I'm Selena, Naruto's friend. The word friend came out a bit too hesitantly and Owen seemed to have misunderstood that. His eyes bulged out in surprise as he shot a look of disbelief at Naruto. No way, how the hell are you dating her? Naruto recoiled, clearly offended. Oi, you old fart, what do you mean by that? Owen ignored him and held out his hand for a shake. I'm Owen, Owen Reeves. Thank you for taking care of my SLA employee. Wait, you were about to say slave, you bastard. She sighed as she shook his hand. Nice to meet you, and no, mister, we're not dating. Owen clicked his tongue in dismay and sent another look at Naruto, of pity this time. Aw, go figure, it's okay, Naruto, you'll get there, he said encouragingly. Shut up, I don't even like her, idiot. He immediately regretted his choice of words and frantically waved apologetically at the woman beside her. What I mean by that is that, I don't like you that way. She rolled her eyes and scoffed. You don't have to explain. I'm fully capable of understanding your nonsense. Owen laughed. He just knew it would never be boring with Naruto around. He got up from the stool he was sitting on and made his way behind the counter. Well, what do you want? We'll be doing a school project here. Is that okay with you? He asked, rubbing the back of his head. Owen raised an eyebrow. Sure, why do it here, though? I might just die if I bring her to my apartment, you know. Naruto chuckled nervously, glancing at Artemis, who had already found a place to sit on. Owen sighed. All right, just don't do anything funny, okay? Yeah, thanks, old man. Artemis breathed out in relief. The man doesn't seem to remember what had happened before. She cautiously listened to their conversation until Naruto started walking to her table. The old man agreed to let us do our project here, he said. So, you ready? A few hours into Naruto's grind, the door suddenly flew open. The three currently inside shifted their gaze to the entrance as two roughed-up kids, a boy and a girl, made their way inside. Help! The male cried out before stumbling onto the floor. Owen immediately ran over to them to assist them. Naruto got over his surprise and stood up to join his boss. The two kids were riddled with bruises, and looked as if they hadn't eaten in days. Their hairs and malnourished bodies looked unkempt, clothes were ripped and torn up in some places. Artemis widened her eyes. At first glance, she could already tell that these two were not mere mortals. She focused her godly sight on them a bit more and found her answer. Two demigods. Easy now, let's do it slowly. Owen carried the male demigod to a table, and saw that his left ankle was a dark purple. It had been dislocated. Naruto supported the female as he slowly led him to their table. Artemis moved to help him and gently took the girl's arms into her shoulders. As soon as she did, the girl fainted from what she assumed to be exhaustion. Whoa, Naruto exclaimed. He swiftly caught the girl before she face-planted into the hardwood floor and carefully placed him on the table. He shot an exasperated look at Artemis and sighed. Well, this just turned into an interesting all-nighter. Artemis frowned and crossed her arms. These are demigods, Naruto, she said, and ones that haven't reached camp yet. Demigods? Camp? What? Naruto frowned. More importantly, where's their godly parent? Are they not watching over their kids? It's complicated. Naruto, I need your help here, Owen shouted from across the room, a couple of ice packs and a duffel bag of what appeared to be medical supplies. The blonde swiftly made his way to the old man's side and observed the boy laid on the table. Holy shit, what happened to him? His ankle is dislocated. We need to try to set it back to its original position, Owen answered in such a professional tone that Naruto was taken aback for a bit. Isn't it better for us to drive them to the hospital? Naruto asked, worry taking over his features. He briefly glanced at Artemis, who had made her way to his side, and crouched next to Owen as he carefully observed the boy's foot. I can't. Hold him still, he answered, taking out what appeared to be a splint from the duffel bag to his side. There doesn't seem to be any complications with his veins or nerves. I'll be setting the bone back into place. Okay, I'm holding him down. Owen gently grabbed his foot and began to slowly and gently contort it back into place. Pained cries from the half-unconscious kid sounding out as he shifted erratically, with Naruto holding him down to prevent any sudden movements that might disrupt the operation. Artemis observed the kid a bit more, trying to figure out which god sired him. His sandy blonde hair, blue eyes, and the structure of his face screamed Hermes to her. I should inform Hermes of this development. All right, it's set. Now help me wrap this around his foot. Here, hold this. Naruto and Owen worked together to tend to the kid's foot. After that, Owen reached into his bag to pull out a medicine container. He opened it and took a tablet. He stood up and gently opened the kid's mouth before popping it inside. Owen sighed. All right, watch him. I'll tend to the girl next. Naruto nodded in confirmation. All right. Artemis and Naruto watched as Owen turned and made his way to the girl. Naruto turned to Artemis and asked, can't you do something to help them? I don't have to, Naruto, she answered. Naruto furrowed his brow at her answer before she continued. Your employer seems to have already given this boy a tablet of nectar. Nectar? The drink of the gods. Mortals cannot drink it, but demigods can. It helps them heal, she elaborated further. I wonder how he knew that, though. Artemis was beginning to grow even more suspicious of Owen. It all adds up, she thought. Owen had said that runaway kids would occasionally find their way to his bar, and that he would take care of them. She could now say that these runaway kids were definitely demigods. It didn't seem like he was clear-sighted, though, nor does he seem to have any prior knowledge of the mythical world. Now that she paid more attention, the bar seemed to be saturated with divine warmth. A warmth that can only be from one deity. It seems Owen was not as ordinary as she had thought. Owen gently lowered the girl's head to the pillow he had set before sighing and standing up. He turned to leave the room but saw Naruto and the lady he was with, Selena, blocking the doorway. They looked at him questioningly, which made him slump his shoulders and nodded at the unspoken inquiry. "So, I guess I should explain," he began, taking a seat to the wooden chair beside the bed. "Go ahead, ask." Naruto looked at Artemis before she stepped forward. "Why didn't you take them to the hospital instead?" Owen scratched his cheek and answered, "Guidelines from the organization funding me." "The Hearth Charity one?" Naruto frowned in confusion. Is that organization somehow connected to the mythical world? Just who is Owen? These were the questions floating in his mind right now. "Yeah, that one. In exchange for their help with the finances, I was to accommodate any and all kids that might come across this place. I was to do it by myself." Artemis raised an eyebrow at what she had just heard. "That all but confirms my suspicions. Hestia's backing him. And that tablet you gave him? It's from them as well. I was ordered to never use it on anyone but the kids. Not even myself." Artemis understood now. Owen didn't have an inkling as to what he was actually doing, or who he was helping. He was a pure soul. A kind man who would do anything to help if given the opportunity. Maybe it was why Hestia seemed to have taken an interest in becoming his patron. The bar was Hestia's in every way. With Owen as her instrument, she would presumably guide demigods there to rest and recuperate before continuing their journey to camp. The homey warmth and safety that the bar provided helped these demigods feel like they can trust Owen. This was all happening without Owen ever knowing. He didn't seem too keen to delve deeper into it, though. She looked at Naruto and nodded, mentally saying to him, "I'll tell you later." He gave a look of understanding and walked to Owen's side before placing his hand on the old man's shoulders comfortingly. "You should rest, old man," he said. "We'll watch them for you, don't worry." Owen sighed and eyed the two kids before nodding. "All right, if I'm not up before the sun rises, wake me up." "Will do." Owen stood up and went out the doorway. Artemis moved aside to let him pass, noting the grateful gaze Owen sent her before he disappeared into the hallway. She looked at Naruto, who was observing the sleeping demigods. She made her way to his side and did the same. "So, who do you think their parents are?" he asked, eyes clouded over in thought. "The boy's father is Hermes, of that I'm sure. The girl though," she took this time to observe the girl on the bed. She had black hair, freckles splattered on her face, and wore an all-black goth-style outfit. "I'm not entirely sure, but..." She focused her senses to feel out this demigod's blood, and what she felt made her recoil in shock. "Fates, no, the prophecy," she muttered. Naruto worriedly looked at her and frowned. "Oi, you okay? What's wrong?" "The girl, she's a child of Zeus," she answered. "Her existence means that the great prophecy is now in effect." "Great prophecy." She looked at him with grave and uncertain eyes before she recited the prophecy. "A half-blood of the eldest gods shall reach 16 against all odds, and see the world in endless sleep. The hero's soul, cursed blade shall reap. A single choice shall end his days. Olympus to preserve or raise. A fellow child of the prophecy, huh?" Naruto clicked his tongue. "She fits the bill, I guess." "She does. Zeus has broken his oath, and the prophecy will now unfold if this child continues to live." Artemis massaged her temple. This was big. The council would surely want to hear this. "Okay, you're making it sound like she's better off dead." Naruto narrowed his eyes. He would not allow that to happen. If any of these gods tried to kill these kids, to hell with Kurama's plan. He'd destroy them all without mercy. "That's what the other gods would want," Artemis answered carefully. She could see Naruto's probing of her intentions. "And you, what do you think should happen?" Artemis hesitated before sighing. What did she want to happen? If it were up to her, she would offer to let the girl join her hunt. That way, she would never age to 16, and the prophecy will be prevented from ever taking place. The problem with that, though, is that the girl is in no condition to decide right now. Which only left one more thought in her mind. I think you should protect her. Naruto blinked in surprise. Huh? I'm a goddess, Naruto. I'm bound by the ancient laws, she answered. As much as I would like to help her, I cannot. But you can. Naruto mulled on that thought. It would definitely be easy to protect her, and the boy with her, but what would happen once he returns home? Would Kurama consent to this? Damn fox, of all the times you could have chosen to sleep, why now? He shook his head. They were kids, dealt with a bad hand by destiny. He would make sure that they never experienced the pain he had to go through alone on his journey to fulfilling what was expected of him as the child of the prophecy. I'll do it, he said resolutely. I'll protect them. The determination and fierce resolve in his voice stunned Artemis. She couldn't fathom why Naruto would so easily offer to help these two kids that he didn't even know. How can a man be so selfless? Think on it a bit more, Naruto. On top of the monsters the other gods will surely unleash upon them. Demigods attract monsters by their scent alone. You will have to fight them off if you wish to protect them, she warned. I will not leave them alone out there, especially if you're planning on telling your fellow gods about her, he retorted, the finality in his voice leaving no room for argument. I'm sorry, Naruto, she muttered softly, slight guilt marring her features. I have my duties to Olympus. I cannot withhold this information from them. Naruto shook his head and offered a look of understanding. Don't apologize. I know, Artemis. I understand. Thank you. Although, I was thinking that maybe, he hesitantly spoke, rubbing the back of his head nervously. Just maybe, you could help me out from time to time? It wasn't like he couldn't protect them on his own. He was more than enough to do so, in fact. But Naruto felt that with the help of the moon goddess, he would be able to lay low a bit more while also not sacrificing the safety of his new wards. He trusted Artemis, and her help with this task would definitely be something Kurama would approve of. He just didn't know if she would accept. I will, she answered, surprising both Naruto and herself. Artemis didn't know what came over her to accept his request so willingly, even if she knew that if her father ever finds out about it, she would definitely be punished. She also didn't know why she felt an immense amount of relief when Naruto smiled at her response and said, Thank you, Artemis. What she did know was that she was doing the right thing. She was sure of it. Ares, a disembodied voice rang out around the war god's room, waking him from his slumber. How are you, grandson? Ares didn't respond. He didn't move at all. Sweat pooled in his forehead as a hellish miasma of entropy filled the atmosphere of the room. In the center, the miasma coalesced into a glowing visage. Well? Ares gritted his teeth. We may have a problem, grandfather. Oh, do tell. Date, February 13, 1997. Luke Castellan never really had a great childhood. His earliest memories of his life in Connecticut were of his mother's insane ramblings and fits. As he grew older, he became more and more frightened of his mother's episodes and eventually ran away from home. This didn't make his life better, though. Life on the streets was tough. With no one but himself to rely on, Luke did anything he could to survive. He would steal, lie, and cheat to get the things he needed. It only got worse as monsters began appearing and attacking him. The mortal weaponry he had been able to steal up until then didn't work on them, and so he would just run away whenever a monster finally caught up to him. Early on, he would try to befriend a few mortals here and there, but when it became apparent that they would never believe what he says, he stopped trying altogether. He would continue to survive by himself for a couple of years before he finally came across someone like him. Someone cursed to be born with divine blood in their veins like he was. Talia Grace. Talia was not someone Luke would have thought he'd get along with. She was hot-headed, stubborn, and bossy. They butted heads with each other often, and would disagree on the plans they would make for surviving the next day. The fact that they chose to travel together was probably only because they only had each other to relate with. It didn't get easy, though. If anything, being with Talia increased the number of monsters they'd encounter compared to when he was alone. It didn't matter to Luke, however. As infuriating Talia was to him, he couldn't just leave her alone. He made up his mind to look out after his fellow demigod, and he vowed to never fail her like how his father failed him and his mother. About 3 months after meeting Talia, the duo found themselves in Manhattan, New York City. During the past few weeks, a significant increase in the number of monsters forced them to be on the move again, which inevitably led them to the city for supplies and a bit of rest. The monsters didn't relent, however, and they were soon cornered into a dead-end alley. A pack of hellhounds blocked the only exit they had, and in desperation, Luke put to use his excellent athletic abilities and parkoured to reach a steel balcony before shouting at Talia to jump for him to catch her. It didn't go as smoothly as he'd like. Talia slipped on the platform she had jumped off of and Luke was forced to reach further he should have. He used his foot to anchor himself to a railing before heaving to pull Talia up, but this resulted in a dislocated ankle. They were able to escape the hellhounds by breaking into the building they've just scaled, but the injury slowed them down. They were barely managing to escape the ferocious jaws of the hellhounds before Luke felt a comforting warmth, akin to that of a mother soothing his back, point him towards a certain place. Talia felt it too. She followed the feeling with Luke on her side, still unable to walk on his own. A few close calls and painful exhaustion later, they'd made it to what appeared to be a bar. As soon as they stepped on the lot, the hellhounds refused to come any closer. Luke urged her to enter the building and ask for help. That was all he remembered before the darkness took him. When Luke finally came to, he expected the cold, hard concrete of the city streets, not the warm, comfy bed of wherever he was in. He expected the dirty walls of the alleyways they've so often had to put up with, not these homey wooden panels. He looked to the other side of the bed and saw his companion, Talia Grace, sleeping comfortably. When was the last time they had slept on a bed? It was no wonder she was drooling. He chuckled and brushed a few stray hair strands away from her face. "I'm glad you're safe." His demigod instincts, honed by years of survival on the run, kicked in as the door opened. He scanned his area of proximity for any possible weapons to use, and reached for the lamp on the bedside, ready to throw it and grab Talia before bolting the hell out. A blond man with what appeared to be whiskers in his cheeks entered the room, carrying a tray with 2 bowls on top. He saw Luke's tension and raised a brow. "Oh, you're up?" He ignored the threatening stance Luke had taken and closed the door behind him. "That's good. I brought food, by the way, so you can calm down now." Luke didn't respond, only choosing to narrow his eyes further. Talia still hadn't woken up. The man made his way to Luke's bedside, cautiously keeping his distance to avoid any provocation. "I got you guys ramen. The old man is still resting, so I'm going to be taking care of you guys for now," he said, smiling kindly to ease the tension in the room. Luke eyed the 2 bowls, before lowering the lamp. "Who are you?" The blonde's grin only widened at his question. "I'm Naruto Uzumaki. You don't have to worry. I'm not gonna hurt you." "Where are we?" "You're in a bar. The blank, to be specific. Not that you'd know about it," Naruto chortled. "You literally stumbled into this place last night." Luke recalled hazy memories of being carried by an old man and the pain that followed when he tended to his foot. He glanced at his foot and inspected the bandages that were wrapped around it. He didn't feel any pain from it anymore, but it would be best to not force anything for now. "There were 3 of you last night," Luke began slowly. "Where are the others?" Naruto rubbed the back of his head, still grinning. Like I said, the old man is just down the hallway. He's resting. As for the other one." Luke noticed the blonde's hesitation, and the guard he had slowly been dropping returned in full force. He narrowed his eyes once more. "Why did you hesitate? What do you want from us?" Naruto waved his hands in front of him apologetically, panic taking over his features. No, it's not like that. She's gone to school, you know." The blonde sighed and massaged his forehead. "It would be great if you at least thanked us for taking care of you guys. Honestly, man." Then, Talia began to stir. The noise they made was apparently enough to rouse the sleeping beauty from her sleep. Luke shifted his gaze to her and made to help her up. "Damn, what's with all the noise?" She rubbed her eyes and recollected her wits from her deep slumber. Then, she noticed her unfamiliar surroundings, and the bed she was on, before her eyes widened and she turned to Luke. "What the fuck? Where are we?" Luke sighed. "Ask him. His name's Naruto. They were the ones that saved us last night." She turned to the unfamiliar-looking blonde questioningly. Naruto sighed again before shaking his head. You're in the blank bar. You guys stumbled into this place last night. We patched you guys up and let you sleep here, he said before clicking his tongue. It wouldn't hurt to say thank you, you know? The duo looked at each other, before Taliah shrugged and turned back to Naruto. Thank you, Whiskers. The nickname made Naruto's eye twitch, and Luke sighed amusedly. Yeah, go eat before it turns cold, the blonde said tiredly before turning around to open the door. I'll be back to get the bowls later. Don't try to break out, please. We'll talk when you get back. They didn't respond as Naruto left the room, closing the door behind him. The son of Hermes took a bowl from the bedside and gently handed it to Taliah, who looked at it in surprise before taking it from his hands. He then proceeded to take his own bowl and took a whiff before digging in. What is this, noodles? Taliah asked with her mouth full. It's good. That guy said it was ramen, Luke answered, eating his meal in a much proper manner compared to the ravenous daughter of Zeus beside him. I think I ate ramen once before. That one was instant ramen, though. Silence permeated the room as they ate their meals. Luke began to think about the circumstances that led them to this place. He remembered that warm feeling of comfort back when they were running from the hellhounds. The feeling led them here, it saved them. Luke didn't know whether to feel happy about it, or if it's just another one of the gods playing with them. Taliah, when we were making our way here, did you feel anything? He asked. Taliah's face scrunched up in thought and she pursed her lip, placing the bowl down gently on the nightstand. I think so, did you? Yeah, was it a warm feeling? It was. You think it was a god who did that? Luke sighed. Probably. I just want to know why, really. Taliah placed a hand on his shoulders. Whoever it was, they saved us, Luke. Only for us to go through it again, Luke snapped, before calming himself and lowering his head. Sorry, I didn't mean to. It's okay, Taliah cut in, offering a light smile to comfort him. I get what you mean. It's just, Luke bit his lip and clenched his fists. If they really wanted to help, why don't they just act like we're actually their children? Why do we have to grow up without them? Taliah didn't respond, and Luke was thankful for it. He had been stressed out the last few weeks due to the large number of monsters they've encountered. He didn't want to argue with Taliah about whether the gods were right to act like gods, instead of their parents. The sudden knock on the door forced him out of his musings, and the blonde, Naruto, entered the room again. Well, Naruto breathed out. You guys done? Good, I'll take the bowls now. He moved across the room to pick up the bowls and trays before moving towards the door again. Before leaving, he looked back at them and said, if you're ready, go down the main room. We'll talk there, okay? He closed the door behind him, leaving Luke and Taliah alone once more. Should we? Taliah asked. It's your call. I think we should, Luke answered. We need answers too, and maybe some supplies. Just don't steal from them, okay? They helped us. Luke jokingly gasped. Taliah, is that what you think of me? That's what you did to the couple that helped us last time. She rolled her eyes, amused at Luke's dramatics. They had more than enough food. Naruto absent-mindedly stirred his coffee as he watched the morning news. He had woken Owen up after serving the two kids their breakfast, and the old man was now tidying up the main room for business. He thought back to his decision to protect the two. He had decided upon that in the spur of the moment, but he'd be damned if he didn't go through with it. The only problem was how Kurama was going to react. Speaking of which, he had been prodding the old fox for a while now. It's only a matter of time before he wakes up. Naruto, Kurama's deep voice rang from within his mind. What is it? Hey, finally awake now, furball? Naruto couldn't help but grin at his buddy's voice. You've missed a lot, we need to talk. Fine. With that, Naruto felt the familiar pull from the seal and went along with it. In a blink of an eye, he found himself in the dark sewers that made up his mindscape. Kurama had already sat up, probably sensing the importance of this talk. Now, tell me what happened, Kurama said. He leaned down to get closer to Naruto to show that he was listening. Naruto nodded and sighed. Well, where do I start? What's the last thing you remember before you took your nap? Kurama scratched his cheek as he tried to recall. You were attending school with that moon goddess. I got bored and fell asleep. Ah, alright, so Artemis and I went to buy clothes for a date. He began to recount the events leading up to last night. Kurama listened intently and withheld himself from commenting until after Naruto had finished. And so I've decided to take care of those two, Naruto finished. So what do you think? Kurama's fierce stare bored into him as his face shifted into a frown. The fox crossed his arms and sighed. Naruto, he said, we're trying to get back home. You remember that, right? Naruto's eyes hardened at those words. Of course I do, but Kurama, these kids need my help. Our help. I won't just stand and do nothing. Kurama's gaze softened. Then tell me why, Naruto. He should have expected Naruto to end up in a situation like this. The boy was a kind soul. He would never ignore the people who were hurting. Why do you want to help them? Do you not miss our world? Your friends? Naruto gritted his teeth and lowered his head. He missed them, of course, but they were far from helpless without him. These two, on the other hand, were just that. He clenched his fists and recalled the painful memories of his childhood. I won't let them suffer like I did. Being born is something they didn't choose to be, he said resolutely. He met Kurama's eyes once more, this time filled with that familiar determination Kurama was so familiar with. My friends have each other. These two have no one. If their gods won't stand beside them, then I will. The hatred his people felt for him, just because Kurama was sealed into him. The loneliness he felt back then, with no one to protect him just because he was different. The people who tried to kill him for being someone he had no choice but to be. He would never let these things happen to the two. If the girl was the child of the prophecy of this world, then it was his duty as a fellow child of the prophecy to help her succeed. To help them succeed. Kurama chuckled humorlessly. He knew that once Naruto was like this, nothing would change his mind. Looks like their plans would have to change once again. Then what's your plan, kid? Their plans to go home would have to wait. Kurama will support Naruto no matter what. That's what friends are for, after all. Naruto smiled. His partner had his back. He didn't have to worry about a thing. I'll take them on as students. Teach them my ways. Teach them to protect themselves, and those precious to them. Kurama grinned amusedly. Leave it to Naruto to attempt the impossible. They don't have chakra, you know. Hey, they're children of the gods. I'm sure they have something, Naruto chuckled. Being a child of a divine being usually had its perks. He thought back to old man Hagoromo. He was the child of that goddess, and the strongest and most legendary figure in their world. Go ahead, Naruto. Kurama held his fist out to the blonde. No matter what, I'll back you up. With how stupid you are, you'll definitely need me. Hey, couldn't ask for more, furball. Artemis waited for the noise in the council room to abate. Ares had returned after healing and was now engaged in a verbal battle with Hermes, who was teasing him about his loss to a mortal. Apollo steps in to help Hermes against Ares, who in turn brought in Aphrodite to assist him. Dionysus was fast asleep on his throne, a can of sweet grape juice hanging from his hands. Athena was busy with a parchment she was reading, muttering strange and confusing words she couldn't even begin to comprehend. The rest of the gods were minding their own business, waiting for their king to end the squabbling amongst the council. The king in question was deep in thought. His brows were furrowed, and a hint of anxiety and worry was evident in his face. It wasn't long before he cleared his throat and addressed the council. Silence, Zeus bellowed. This meeting, called upon by my daughter, Artemis, has commenced. The room quieted down soon after, and Zeus nodded in satisfaction. He shifted his gaze to Artemis before motioning her to stand. Go on, daughter, report. Yes, father, she said, making her way to the center of the room. I have called upon all of you here today to bring you dire news. She steeled her eyes and met her father's gaze. I have discovered the existence of a demigod that signifies the beginning of the prophecy. The news pulled the attention of all the gods in the room. Everyone was now listening. She sighed. A demigod of Zeus exists. She looks to be around the age of 10 or 11. Poseidon was the first to react, rage taking over his features as he glared harshly at his brother. It was a bit too forced, though, and Artemis wouldn't have noticed it if she hadn't paid much attention. You broke the oath? Poseidon shouted incredulously. The council exploded into noise once more. The gods all voiced their discontent at the fact that the king of the gods has broken another oath. In less than a century since its creation too, Zeus buried his face into his hands in resignation. Hermes stood up, fists clenched as disappointment marred his features. Father, this is unjust. You force us to follow the laws, yet you cannot do the same. Artemis heard a bit of worry and anger in his voice, which surprised Artemis. Does he know that his son is traveling with that demigod? She would have to talk to him later. Zeus finally had enough of the chaos, and with his master bolt, the loud boom of thunder made everyone stop with whatever they were doing. Quiet down, Zeus bid out. They all followed and anxiously waited for Zeus' next words, a multitude of emotions clear upon the faces of the gods. Artemis, where is my daughter? She bit her lip and hesitated, remembering her promise to help Naruto out no matter what. Traveling, Lord Zeus, she is with another demigod, a son of Hermes. Another chorus of whispers ensued, but was quick to fade out as Zeus made to speak once more. Bring her to camp, now, he ordered, and was soon met with angered oppositions from a few of the gods. You do not have the authority to order such a thing, Zeus. Poseidon shouted, you've been enforcing the ancient laws forbidding the gods from interfering with their children, yet you have the audacity to break them? If you want to bring her to camp, you'll have to do the same to my son. Hermes voiced out. Father, be reasonable, Athena advised, but the harshness of her eyes betrayed her anger at what Zeus had just ordered. This would not sit well with the other gods. Hera didn't bother to try to dissuade her husband. She was strangely calm, considering the situation. If you even so much as try to assist her, you better keep her safe forever, Zeus. Whatever happens to her will be justified then. The talk of killing innocent children disgusted Artemis. She was by no means innocent, but Naruto's opinions on the pettiness of the gods had made her rethink her stance on the matter at hand, and she had agreed that no child deserved to be killed for the sins of their parent. She refrained from speaking her mind so as to not clue anyone in on the lie she had told the council. She would have to make sure to try to buy enough time for Naruto to prepare for the task he has set upon himself. It was the least she could do. In the end, Zeus had no choice but to relent. He couldn't help her out explicitly, but Artemis knew her father better than that. Zeus would find a way to assist his daughter, no matter what. The noise died down after that, and Zeus turned to Artemis once more. Any other news, daughter? What of the prologue, the mortal? The slip didn't go unnoticed by the council, though a few of the gods didn't pay much attention to it. Athena definitely did, and so did Artemis. They glanced at each other before turning their attention back to Zeus. Naruto is as docile as one can be, father. He hasn't done anything to warrant our attention, she answered. Aside from taking your daughter in, that is. Good, Athena, how goes your task? Athena cleared her throat. It is going well, father. I am now well acquainted with Naruto, and am nearing the goal. Excellent. Zeus nodded in satisfaction. Or at least that's what it would have looked like if his face wasn't as grim as it was. If that is all, then you are all dismissed. He disappeared in a brilliant flash of lighting, one significantly more powerful than usual, which was a sign of his anger at the outcome of the meeting. The other gods followed suit, but Artemis called for Hermes to stay. What is it, sister? Hermes inquired. About your son, brother, she replied. At this, her half-brother's eyes turned cold as they narrowed. What of him? It would be best if you were to meet him. Hermes raised a brow in confusion. The ancient laws forbid me from doing so. You know this. It will be fine. He is currently under my jurisdiction, and you will not be overstepping any laws, she said. The son of Hermes was currently with her ward, Naruto, meaning if Artemis allowed it, Hermes would be able to speak to him. What do you mean, under your jurisdiction? He asked suspiciously. She should have expected the cautious and worried prodding. She wasn't really known to be kind at treating males. He is safe and unharmed, brother, I assure you. Hermes eyed her for a moment before he sighed and nodded. Good, where shall we meet? After their talk in the seal, Naruto resumed his work around the bar. He had opted to take the early shift today, in case Owen needed help with the kids. Artemis had said she would be informing the gods about the kids, although she assured him that she wouldn't tell them about them being here, nor the fact that he was taking them in. The sound of footsteps interrupted his thoughts as the two demigods stepped into the main room of the bar. They cautiously looked around before noticing him and sighing in relief. Naruto grinned at them and pointed at the seats around the bar. "Take your seat, I'll be with you shortly." They nodded and went to do just that before he set down the box he was carrying on the counter and shouted for Owen to come to the room. He then turned around and made his way to the two. "The old man will be here shortly," he said. "So, what are your names?" The two glanced at each other hesitantly before the girl shrugged and answered, "I'm Talia Grace." The boy sighed and followed suit. "I'm Luke Castellan." Naruto nodded and briefly glanced at the door to the back room before whispering, "So who are your godly parents?" The question startled both of them. Their eyes widened and Naruto saw that they were about to panic, so he quickly added, "Don't worry. I'm not exactly mortal too, you know?" Their surprise quickly turned into confusion. "What?" Talia asked intelligently. Luke frowned and narrowed his eyes. "Are you a demigod as well?" "Well," Naruto scratched his cheek. "Technically, since old man Hagoromo had given him the young half of his chakra and told him he was the reincarnation of Ashura, it wasn't a stretch to say he was. Kinda? It's complicated, but my ancestor is a demigod." This answer didn't help to lower the tension of the two. Luke didn't relent and Naruto saw that he was trying to find the knife he had taken from him last night. "Why would you help us? What are you planning?" Luke asked with more than a bit of suspicion laced into his voice. "I promise you, I'm only here to help," Naruto said pleadingly. "Swear it on the sticks," Talia said. The two looked at her, before she smiled sheepishly. "I heard it from my dad when he visited my mother once." Naruto raised a brow at what she said before sighing. "Fine, I promise I'm only here to help you too. I swear it on the sticks." The sudden booming of thunder outside surprised the three of them, and they looked at each other nervously. "What was that?" Naruto asked. "I don't know," Talia answered. "But you're still alive, so I guess you're telling the truth." "Talia, don't be rash, please," Luke spoke, clearly still not trusting the blonde. "It's fine, Luke. If he wanted to hurt us, he would have done it already. And I definitely don't want to hurt you guys," Naruto added weakly. Luke bit his lip and sighed resignedly. "Fine, your call." Talia hesitated for a second and pursed her lip before nodding to herself. "I'm a daughter of Zeus." Luke followed her and said, "Son of Hermes." Naruto nodded. He would have to figure out if they had any special abilities, but from the get-go, he would guess and say that Talia might have abilities similar to lightning release. Luke, on the other hand, he had no idea. All in due time, he thought. "Don't rush it, Naruto," Kurama advised. "They still don't trust you." "I know, Kurama, don't worry about it." Then, Owen came out from the back room, carrying a tray of food. He saw them and smiled before making his way towards their table. "Good morning, you two," he smiled kindly and set the tray down on the table. "Here, I know you just ate, but it would be good if you have some real food." "Oi, what are you saying, old man?" Naruto exclaimed in annoyance. "I'm saying that ramen of yours should not be considered food." Naruto gasped as he looked scandalized and placed his hand on his chest. "Take that back. Ignore him. He's noisy, but he's funny. You'll get used to it," Owen told the kids, who watched the comedic exchange with dry looks. He offered a kind smile to them before introducing himself. "I'm Owen Reeves. You are?" "I'm Talia. This guy's Luke." "Pleasure to meet you, Talia, Luke. Eat up." He took the remaining seat beside Naruto, who was still glaring at him, and took a plate of his own. The duo slowly took a plate from the tray and started to eat. "So, what happened to you guys last night?" Owen inquired. Talia glanced at Luke, who then glanced at Naruto, who subtly shook his head. Luke cleared his throat before answering, "We ran away from home. I broke my foot after landing badly from a jump." "Is that so? Where are you from?" "Connecticut." At his, Owen's eyes widened in surprise. "Connecticut? You're pretty far from home, kid." Owen propped his head up on an elbow and gazed down at him. "Are there people looking for you?" Luke nervously scratched his cheek. Naruto could already see the thoughts that were forming in his mind. No, there's no one." Owen seemed to have noticed his nervousness and chuckled. Don't worry, I'm not going to force you back. You must have run away for a reason, right? The son of Hermes sighed in relief. Thank you, mister. What about you, little miss? Are you his sister? Owen turned to Talia, who was halfway through her meal. Talia looked up from her plate and swallowed the food in her mouth before answering, no. I'm his aunt actually. Her answer made Luke shoot a glare at her, but she dismissed it. What? It's technically true. Luke rolled his eyes, which resulted in Talia sticking her tongue out to him. Naruto grinned at their antics, remembering his time with his old team. It wasn't as clean as the friendship of these two, but he'd like to think he got through Sasuke for a bit back then. Sasuke and the others, he wanted to see them again, but they could hold their own without. They were strong. These two kids in front of him weren't. They needed guidance. He would be their strength until they gained their own. I wonder what Kakashi would say, he thought. He would definitely be proud of you, Naruto. They all will, Kurama answered. That was true. He knew his father would always support him. It just saddened him a bit that he wasn't able to say a proper goodbye. He shook those thoughts away. He needed to focus now. He still hasn't brought up the fact that he would be taking the two demigods under his wing. He didn't even know if they would accept. But is that okay with you, Naruto? He was knocked out of his musings by Owen, who was asking him something. Sorry, what were you saying? He smiled apologetically at the old man, who rolled his eyes. We were talking about whether it would be fine for them to stay for a bit, Owen answered. I need you to watch them, though. Is that okay? Naruto grinned and nodded enthusiastically. Sure, I'll keep them safe. What will you be doing? I have an appointment with my doctor today, so I'll leave the bar to you for now, okay? The blonde shinobi raised an eyebrow at that piece of information. You sick, old man? Owen just waved him off and chuckled. Don't worry about that, just the years finally getting to me. Naruto eyed him worriedly before reluctantly nodding and sighed. He turned to the two demigods, who had just finished their meals, and smiled at them. Right, I'll clean up and get going. I'll be leaving the keys to you, Naruto, Owen said before he got up and collected the plates and utensils on the table before heading to the back room. Take care, old man. Don't take too long, now, Naruto shouted in response, waving cheerily as he grinned. As the old man disappeared into the back room and left through the rear exit, he turned to the duo in front of him. So, he began, now that we're alone, I have something to ask of you too. The two perked up at his words, and they listened intently. I can see that the two of you have been having trouble in the streets, so how about just sticking with me? Their eyes widened in surprise, disbelief clear in their faces. What? Talia asked incredulously. Luke was even more befuddled. He couldn't believe what he had just heard. You aren't actually expecting us to take that offer, right? Hear me out, you two. Naruto tried to keep his grin up, but the suspicious eyes of the two were chipping away at him. He let it fall and sighed, shoulders sagging. I know we've only just met, but I can't just stand still and watch you guys hurt yourself trying to survive. Let me help you. That's an understatement, Talia muttered under her breath. Thank you for the offer, but no, Luke responded as he moved to get up from the booth. A frown appeared on his face. I can't put our lives at risk by trusting you. Thank you for the help, BU. Now, hold on, son, a man's voice from behind them sounded out. It would be best for you to rethink your decision. Luke's eyes hardened at what the man had said, and without warning, spun around so quickly and threw a punch right at the face of the man. His punch was a blur, but it never connected. The man, who looked so much like Luke one could only think they were related, had tilted his head to avoid the punch. His blue eyes staring longingly at the kid who had just attempted to sucker punch him. Father, Luke spat out venomously, his own blue eyes glaring murderously at the man's. What are you doing here? Talia had gotten up and held Luke's arm to stop him from going any further, and Luke reluctantly pulled his arm back to his side. The man, now revealed to be Luke's father, Hermes, sighed and lowered his head. Before Hermes could speak, a voice interrupted him. Watch yourself, boy, he is your father, and you must respect him. Artemis appeared from behind Hermes and made her way to Naruto, who was looking over the situation with serious eyes. Naruto looked at her questioningly, but she just shook her head. Later, Talia's eyes widened when she saw Artemis, recalling the night prior, and bowed her head. Lady Artemis, thank you for helping us last night. Luke's head snapped towards Naruto, who sheepishly smiled and quickly said, "Ah, right. The third person last night was her." "No need for that, Talia Grace," she said. "In here, call me Selena." Talia furrowed her brow but nodded nonetheless. Luke reluctantly followed suit and bowed his head. "I apologize for my disrespect," he said blankly, though the anger in his eyes was clear to everyone in the room. "Where is Owen, Naruto?" Artemis inquired. Naruto cleared his throat and sighed. "He's off to the hospital. Won't be back before the evening at the least." She nodded and gestured towards the sandy blonde man facing off against Luke. "He's Hermes. I'm sure you've read of him?" "Yeah, I figured. So, what's he doing here?" He narrowed his eyes. "I thought you said you were going to keep this a secret?" "He's the only one who knows," Artemis scoffed as she answered. "He's not like Zeus. He truly loves his son, Naruto." He stared at her intently before nodding. "Okay then, I trust you," he breathed out. "It doesn't seem like Luke wants to see him though." Luke and Talia stood a few steps away from Hermes, who was frowning. "Luke, I know you're angry at me, be you?" "Angry?" Luke snarled. "You left us, you drove Mother insane and disappeared. The ancient laws forbid us from meddling with our children's lives, Luke," Hermes said pleadingly. "Then why are you here?" Hermes gritted his teeth, before taking a deep breath and calming himself down. "I'm here because I want to talk to you. To check up on you, my son." "Then you're done here. I have nothing more to talk to you about, father," Luke retorted, crossing his arms between his chest. "Luke," Talia voiced out, "at least listen to what he wants to say, please. For me?" Luke's eyes fell. He couldn't say no to Talia at all. He sighed. "Fine." He met his father's gaze once more, looking expectantly at him. "Well, say what you want, father." "Thank you, Talia Grace," Hermes said gratefully to the daughter of Zeus. He cleared his throat and looked to where Naruto and Artemis were sitting. "I'm assuming he wants to help protect you?" Luke glanced at where his father's gaze was and saw Naruto and Artemis. He nodded and answered in a clipped tone. "Yeah," he offered. "We have no plans to accept. We barely know him." Hermes nodded in understanding and crossed his arms. "You should accept it, son. He's someone you can trust." Hearing that from a god doesn't make it true, Luke snapped. "Why should we trust your word? Even if you hate me, I am still your father, Luke. I am only looking out for you." "Oh, what a big help you are, father," Luke retorted. "Luke, please. Why are so intent on making us agree? Happy that someone can now do your job as a parent for you?" "Because if you do, I can start seeing you again," Hermes shouted, surprising everybody in the room. The emotions he showed were unbefitting of a god, so he restrained himself. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." "It's okay, Lord Hermes," Talia cut in, before glaring at Luke. "Luke, I think we should just do it." "But Talia, I'm tired of facing death every day, Luke," Talia said pleadingly. "If the gods say he can help protect us, then that's enough for me. I'd rather not risk our lives anymore." Luke went silent, and Naruto stood up from his seat. "I won't just be protecting you, you know?" The two demigods looked at him questioningly. He rubbed the back of his head. I was planning on teaching you guys on how to protect yourself too." "You said you were technically of divine blood, but what are you really?" "Lady Miss Selena knows you, so you must be someone special, right?" Talia asked. Artemis perked up at this and began to listen intently, as did Hermes. Naruto sighed. "Naruto, don't tell them the whole truth," Kurama advised. "Got it." Naruto breathed in deeply and answered. "I'm a descendant of a demigod. Artemis and Apollo saved me a few weeks ago." "Oh, a legacy?" Hermes stroked his chin. "Who's your godly ancestor?" "Our best bet would be to say a nature god. Your sage mode can pass off as an ability of one." "A god of nature. I'm not sure who, though," Naruto answered. Artemis spoke up. "Is that why that nature spirit possessed you? Why can't I feel any divine blood from you at all?" He sighed. "I don't know the answer to those questions. What I do know is that I can do this." Ready, Kurama? Naruto was about to enter sage mode to prove his story. Go for it, I've gathered enough for a few seconds. He tapped into the sage chakra Kurama had gathered and in an instant, power rolled off his form. Orange pigmentation surrounded his eyes, and his pupils turned into that of a toad's. Ever since I got possessed, I gained the ability to become like this, Naruto said, inspecting his body for them to see. He sent a few jabs into the air, which caused mild pulses of air pressure to blow. I think it's the fox spirit. I can remember things I haven't experienced. Things like combat, weird nature thingies, and this. The 2 gods and 2 demigods could literally feel his powerful presence. Hermes raised an eyebrow at the display. This was enough power to take on a god. He could definitely see the merit of having this blonde man take on the protection of his son, and that daughter of Zeus. Artemis sighed in contentment. The comforting feeling of nature that Naruto was producing felt so pleasing to her senses. That kind of attunement to nature was only achievable by being related to a nature deity, so she believed his story. So, how about it? Naruto cheerily inquired, the power slowly fading from him as his eyes returned to normal. You interested in learning from me? Accept it, boy, Artemis said. Become strong enough to protect yourself and your friend. Is that not what you want? Hermes nodded in agreement but didn't say anything else. Luke and Talia shared a look with each other. I think we should do it, Talia whispered. Better than running from monsters and living in the dumps, right? Your call, Falls, Luke replied resignedly. Wherever you go, I go. Thanks, Luke. She smiled at him and turned to Naruto. Fine, we accept your offer, Whiskers. Naruto grinned. Hey there, Thelia. Athena could already imagine him grinning goofily as he held his phone up. You still up for tomorrow? She hesitated for a second before replying, of course, Naruto. Naruto must have caught her hesitation and asked concernedly, is something wrong? Are you busy? Athena sighed. She was in the final planning phase of her plan. She now knew Naruto was no ordinary mortal, and despite their growing relationship, she couldn't just simply expect him to side with Olympus just for her. No, Naruto, I'm just nervous is all. About what? Anything I can do to help? She could feel his worry from over the phone. He must be frowning by now. No, it's under control. Don't worry. 6 p.m. sharp, right? He paused before relenting. Yeah, I'll pick you up at the park. I'd love that, she replied. Listen, I have to go. I need to finish up this presentation. Later, Naruto. Take care, Thelia. Whatever it is you're doing, don't worry. I know you can do it. She chuckled. The blonde ball of joy always knew what to say regardless of the situation. Thanks, Naruto. Take care. She hung up and placed the phone on her desk before sighing. She needed to perfect the plan before she gets too attached to Naruto. Even now, she's starting to doubt the morality of what she's planning. She shakes these thoughts off of her head. She was a goddess. The goddess of wisdom must be rational and logical. Morality is an obstacle when it comes to success in a war. And right now, Olympus is relying on her to reign in a threat to its reign. She will not fail. Her children will always be loyal to her, after all. What is the best way to start a war, grandson? A disembodied voice asked from nowhere as Ares was currently practicing his sword skills inside his throne room. Insult the other party, grandfather, Ares answered, swinging his celestial bronze broadsword at such great speeds as he moved across the room. A show of mistrust, disregard for their sovereignty, stealing their treasures. He jumped into the air and slammed the broadsword down onto the floor, causing an explosive wave of fire to emanate around him. Their wives, or just kill one of their men, the easiest trick in the book. Perfect answers, as expected of the god of war himself, the voice praised. Then how do you feel about killing a certain demigod? The daughter of Zeus? Ares furrowed his brow. That would be a colossal task, even for a god like him. Zeus would surely be keeping an eye on his daughter, especially now that Artemis has spilled that information to everyone and their mother. He was surprised when the voice of his grandfather answered, no, grandson. His confusion only grew. Then who? Is there another child of Zeus? A child of Poseidon.